Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, it's nice to see everyone came out on this nice chilly evening, so thank you very much for coming tonight. First order of business is we always approve the agenda. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion by Sean Ryan, second by Dave Brusian to approve the agenda as presented. There's no other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 4-0. The next couple items are some housekeeping items that we have to take care of due to the special election, and the winner of that special election is Mr. Bruce Wolf. So, Mike, if you want to give him his oath to office.
I will, but let me give a little bit of background for the benefit of those in attendance tonight. Mr. Wolf was recently elected here at the special election to fill the vacancy at the November 6, 2018 special election. After we swear him in this evening, he will serve as a council member until December 31st of 2020. The term of office that Bruce has won the special election for was originally vacated by former council member Jenna Tuma, who was scheduled to cover the 4-year term from January 1 of 2017 through December 31 of 2020. Jenna left, I think it was about June of 2017, and then in August of that year, the council appointed Maggie Bass, who I believe is in the audience tonight, up front to fill the vacancy until we could get to the special election, which was held in with our regular election on November 6th. Maggie also was elected as a council member, so she will return to the council come January. So a little bit of musical chairs here on a temporary basis, but we will administer the oath of office to Bruce, and then he will be officially on the council. So Bruce, if you want to come right center. If you'll raise your right hand, please. The right oath of office here. Not very often we let people swear with you here, but if you repeat after me, I, Bruce Wolf.
I, Bruce Wolf,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and of the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of the office as council member
as office of council member
of the city of New Prague
of the city of New Prague
in the counties of Scott and LeSueur
in the counties of Scott and LeSueur
and state of Minnesota
and state of Minnesota
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
That's it. You're in. Thank you.
Welcome aboard, Bruce. Looking forward to working with you the next couple of years. The next thing we have to do is everyone who is on the council serves on the Housing and Redevelopment Authority Commission. And at this time, I guess I look for, I'd like to appoint Mr. Wolf to fulfill that opening on the HRA Commission. So I guess I need a motion to...
So moved.
Second.
To appoint you.
Okay, a motion by Dave Brusick, second by Kay Wilcox to accept the appointment of Bruce Wolf to the HRA Commission. If there's no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 4-0. Mike, would you like to, another oath you have to do, Bruce?
I will swear with him for the second time.
That's the last swearing in we'll have you to do tonight, sorry.
All right, if you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Bruce Wolf,
I, Bruce Wolf,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United United States
of America and the state of Minnesota,
of America and the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties of the office
and faithfully discharge the duties of the office
of the Commissioner of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority
Commissioner of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority
of Prague, Minnesota,
of Prague, Minnesota,
according to law
according to law
and to the best of my judgment and ability.
and to the best of my judgment and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I do further swear
I do further swear
that I am,
that I am,
and was at the time of my appointment,
and was at the time of my appointment,
a resident of the city of New Prague, Minnesota.
a resident of the city of New Prague, Minnesota.
Congratulations, Bruce, on both of your appointments, and good luck. Well, now let's get to the meat of the agenda. The first thing we are going to have is a public hearing on the 2019 street and utility improvement project. We're going to start with our city engineer, Chris Cabot, who is going to kind of go through a little presentation on what is proposed, and then we will open the floor up for public comment. And all I ask is when we do open the floor up for public comment, we'd like you to please come to the podium, state your name and address, and make your statement. So, your floor, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council, and public. Again, as the Mayor mentioned, this is the public hearing for the 2019 Street Utility Improvement Project. I do want to remind folks there is an agenda in the back there. If you didn't get a chance, feel free to grab one. We also have a sign-in sheet. If you can, please note that if you aren't here in attendance for the public hearing, we do like to keep a record of how many people are in attendance. There's also some blue comment cards back there too, where if you have any questions, either at the end of the evening or later on that you didn't want to ask here, feel free to fill them out and forward it on to City Hall or to my office at SEH. Couple quick housekeeping or other items real quick to mention. I do want to make a few other introductions of individuals here as well. Tony Weinandt and Jake Balk are here from Scott County. And then also Mike Kodola from SEH, who's our traffic engineer, that will also be giving a brief presentation in the middle of my presentation. So again, this is the purpose of this meeting. It's a public hearing. Basically, it gives an opportunity to present the project again. It was presented at a neighborhood meeting back in October, but presented again in a formal study. Opportunity for folks to ask questions, the council, and the council to consider ordering the project. It's basically the resolution ordering the improvements. As the mayor mentioned, protocol for the meeting, again, I'll present, open it up to the council to ask questions, and then the mayor will turn it over to the public for comment and questions. So this process and procedure that we're following is all based on what we call the public improvement process. It follows Minnesota Statutes 429. In short, it is basically the statute that allows cities to do collective projects with community and to assess some of the benefit to the properties on the project. In short, that's basically what it is. It's the most effective financing tool for municipalities to do projects like this. This is the project. It's a fairly significant area. Obviously, actually, if I could get a quick show of hands, I'm guessing most people are here for the public hearing. Can I see who's here for the public hearing? Okay. Of you that are here tonight, how many were here at the neighborhood meeting back in October? Okay, we got a few. Okay. So, obviously, this is going to be a recap of some of the items that we covered in the public hearing. So these are the streets that have been identified as the 2019 Street Utility Improvement Project. I see a couple of dark areas in dark here. I don't know why they came through like that on the print, but it's all these that are labeled in dark. County Road 37, I want to point that out first. So County Road 37 from Highway 21 on the west side all the way to Highway 19 down to where it meets Main Street is included in the project as a cooperative project between Scott County and the city. It was something that we just had discussed with the county and elected to do because it was a good fit for the projects that we proposed within the city, but what we're calling the local streets. So that area to the east end, the Lady Slipper and Ironwood and all these over in this area, Phillip Parkway, up here on the north end, 12th Street, Columbus, Heritage Trail, and down on the south end, Columbus South, and the side streets off of that. I want to point out the difference. County Road 37 is what we refer to as a pavement replacement project, where all the local streets are proposed to be a mill and overlay, and I'll get into a little detail of what that is. Really, the name specifies it. More than anything, a pavement replacement is basically removing all the existing pavement through a process, either removal or what they call reclamation, grinding up the pavement and the gravel to make a nice homogeneous material, removing the excess gravel, and then repaving brand new pavement throughout. That again is what is proposed on County Road 37. Again, full replacement of the pavement down to the full depth of the pavement. The other streets, again, as the name implies, mill and overlay. In most cases, it'll just be milling the edge of the roadway near the curb to make room for a new mat of blacktop. So milling the edges and then overlaying the whole street. This is what we call a pavement preservation project. This is not a full reconstruction like we've seen happen through the city for back in the early 2000s and early 2010s. The last full reconstruction project we did was in 2014. In 2015, we did a project very similar to this over on the west side of town, which was a pavement replacement project and a small area of mill and overlay. So again, it was setting the precedence for this type of project, a pavement preservation project. I'm going to back up one slide. So some of the other things that will happen with this project is some sidewalk improvements. We're not proposing new reconstruction or new construction of sidewalks, but rather repair of sidewalks that are in poor shape. But most importantly is the bringing pedestrian ramps at the intersections, and most of this is along County Road 37. Bringing the pedestrian facilities, the pedestrian ramps into compliance with the American Disabilities Act. The standards have changed over the years. There's better information and details on how to construct them, and it's a policy to bring these into compliance with current standards. So most of that work throughout is going to be pedestrian ramps, and then there'll be some segments along 37 where there's actually what they call too much cross slope. In areas where it exceeds standards, we'll be looking at opportunities to either level it or replace it so that it is level. But again, it's in cooperation with the county on improvements. In the local streets, there just isn't much for pedestrian facilities. There is a little bit in like a First Street Northeast over here and a few other areas and trail entrances and things like that. Those again will also be brought into current compliance. But again, most of those ADA sidewalk improvements will be along County Road 37. There will be some spot repairs of the sanitary system throughout the project area has been televised. They're going to hammer through to verify that there's no major problems. We've identified some things that need to be addressed, and I think pretty much everything we found was trenchless. Yeah, that we can repair it from within without digging up. That's not to say we may determine later that we need to look at other options, but for the most part, the existing systems are fine, and we'll be leaving them in place with the exception of a few minor repairs. Reconstructing some of the tops of manholes, the covers and lids, a lot of those have deteriorated over time. Water main, Pretty much nothing is planned for water main improvements. There's a few valves that need to be replaced. Some of that will actually be done by the utility ahead of time. But for the most part, it's just adjusting gate valves and things like that. Again, leaving the water main in place. Probably the biggest item of work, and again, nothing real significant, is storm sewer. Mostly rehabilitation. Throughout the project, a lot of the catch basins and stuff have deteriorated over time. Some of them have been rehabbed already by Public Works. Some will be addressed with the project. Probably the majority of the storm sewer work is again going along County Road 37. It's older, more deteriorated in some of the cases, some of the catch basin and manhole structures are getting completely replaced because they've deteriorated beyond repair. And it's the most economic way to deal with them. Again, not real disruptive work, but I'll call it more rehabilitation type work to carry this roadway well into the future. So that's it for kind of a summary of kind of the work that's proposed. And then I'm going to turn it over here to Mike here in a second. Mike Kodola, to talk about the discussion we've had about considering these intersections at Columbus and County Road 37 and Columbus and 12. Again, we're here now. We're doing improvements now, and it's the time of asking, should we be considering something for these intersections, for intersection control from now and into the future? So with that, I am going to turn it over to Mike.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, Mayor and council members and public. Chris kind of set this up pretty well for me in terms of the locations that we want to talk about for potential change to traffic control. But on the screen now, you see the kind of a focus study area with Columbus Avenue running north-south right up the middle, and on the north circle is 12th Street, and on the south circle is 7th Street. Also identified are some pretty significant traffic generators in the high school on the northwest quadrant of 12th, and Columbus Elementary School to the south there, and the middle school down close to 7th. Both of these intersections operate today under the control of an all-way stop, so they are operating fairly safely. There are some operational issues that are occurring. A lot of it's associated to the school traffic piece, and I want to talk about that in terms of what are the issues today, what are the issues that you might expect going forward as traffic volumes grow over time. So as we look at evaluation of these intersections, what we really want to do is to determine what's the optimum long-term intersection configuration, and then assess whether or not it's worthy of investment. Is the pavement rehab project, does it leverage enough improvement value to go a step further and make improvements in terms of potential mini roundabouts. We do consider the existing traffic conditions as well as look at that 20-year projection up to 2039. And the traffic growth over that time period is estimated at about 30%, so about 1.5% per year over 20 years, about 30% growth from today's conditions. But the study that we performed evaluated intersection delay, level of service is kind of a grade level based on delay, traffic queue lengths, safety for both motorized and non-motorized users. I'm going to touch on what I think are the key aspects to those findings here in the next two slides. I mentioned the school activity that occurs on these intersections, and there's three distinct time periods that are relevant. The morning peak hour overlaps with the arrival time for the high school and the middle school, and then the PM dismissal period happens before the afternoon rush hour. So there's three different time periods, and you see different traffic patterns occurring during those time periods. The afternoon peak, or the PM peak hour, 4:30 to 5:30, is actually the highest volume time. However, the traffic arrives kind of a pretty balanced arrangement, a pretty balanced pattern. So the always stops work pretty well, actually, during the highest peak. The biggest issues occur when the school traffic overlaps with the rush hour traffic in the morning. I'll show you some of that. Jumping to the conclusion of our study findings, we did think about signalization and found that traffic signals are not warranted now. They would not be warranted in 20 years from now. So we kind of set that idea aside and think about other alternatives. One would be to continue with always stop control. It does work today. We talked about delay and level service. They're acceptable because when you really look at them over an hour's average, and some of the speeds are occurring in a much more narrow band of time, 15-minute peak flows. And that's what you see when you see the queues out there is likely an overlap of some of the school activity with other rush hour traffic. And like I said, today's condition is indicative maybe of what's going to continue to be an issue in the future. Roundabouts, we found would function well now, and they would continue to function well in the future and have a very good operating level of service and low delay value. I'm going to show you some of what that means in terms of queues and delays. The next several slides are from a traffic model that is assessing the operation of the always stop condition. This image is coming from Columbus at 7. It's at 20 years out, so we're looking at that future condition in the morning. You can see some long queues that would occur in that future condition on the eastbound approach on 7th and the southbound approach on Columbus. And again, we're at the AM peak, so we've got school activity at all three facilities and a lot of bus activity, especially north-south on Columbus in between the schools and back to the bus garage. So this is kind of the net effect of the school activity plus arrivals for home work and other things that people do in the mornings. That same intersection at school dismissal looks pretty calm by comparison to their morning peak. You do see some queuing on the southbound approach. And again, we're out 20 years from now, but the always stop is processing those demands quite effectively. Not very alarming looking in this kind of view. When you get to the afternoon peak hour, the school activity is over with, but we do see a real heavy demand eastbound through the intersection, and it's likely a lot of folks who can go home to work in charge or other employers off the west. The same three time periods up at 12th Street in the morning. Again, this is during school arrival time. You can see there's these long marks here are actually buses that are coming down to the intersection. And there's some queuing that occurs on the eastbound side of eastbound approach 12th. Again, not an alarming looking situation when you look at that image. And what I'd like you to do is remember some of the queue lengths here, because when I go to the main roundabout model, you'll be able to compare how well maybe the roundabout performs to these other situations, especially when we get to the situation like this one, again in the afternoon now, PM dismissal. We do form a pretty good queue on 12th Street, and we've got a pretty good queue happening on Columbus. The other approaches are operating pretty clean. Of course, the always stop occurs kind of whose turn is it next. So on the minor approaches, they get served and don't need to wait through a queue before it's served. So with those kind of images in mind, oh, here's one more at the PMP. Again, no school activity at this point, maybe some residual activity from high school, afternoon activities. But again, not an alarming situation. So when we talk about need, so there are some peak conditions that are occurring, and I think about it in terms of need plus opportunity. So the project kind of presents an opportunity to make it better for the long term, if you so choose. Now, this is from another traffic model, but it's the same set of volume conditions as we just looked at. I chose the morning peak to show you because it has some interesting activity happening with the buses, especially at 12. We've got models like this set up for each of the time periods. This runs about 2.5 minutes. I thought it would, oops, a little bit back up. That one. Okay, there you go. We're going to zoom in on it in a second or so.
Yeah, if you look closely, you can kind of see it looks like a little lantern running on the screen.
All right, so we're going to zoom down to 7th Street intersection. Again, we're in the morning. If you remember the morning view of this with the always stop, we have a long queue coming from the eastbound into the intersection and southbound to the intersection. This is the same volume set operating with the mini roundabout. Buses, passenger vehicles. There's some pedestrians. There's a pedestrian approaching across the south right here, right now. That one made it without any causing any delay to the vehicular traffic. Then we have a little bit of a queue forming eastbound as you approach. The actual delay that they experience is quite low, even though it does queue up 4 or 5 deep. The average delays over these time periods is quite low, and still in that level service A and B kind of a range. We pan up to 12th, still in the morning. And here what's interesting is the bus activity coming out of the bus lot from the high school on the north side through the intersection. Both of these mini roundabouts are with layouts with the geometry you see here. They would allow buses to maneuver through without crossing the center island. Here you see pedestrians here that are causing cars in the circle to delay. It does kind of bog things down a little bit, but then clears up. So the geometry here fits within the existing roadway widths. It was controlled by the existing roadway widths. Up at 12th here, this one is about 82 feet, very similar to what you're planning on Main Street in terms of diameter. The one down at 7th is about 100 feet in diameter, so it's actually a range of what we call mini roundabout, almost to the point where it's a full roundabout size. Safety is certainly a big consideration. Some stats here from MnDOT studies, and this first one, head and bike activity at roundabouts. The statement is a year old, so if something happened in the last year, it may not be true anymore. But no serious injury or fatalities at any roundabout with pedestrian or bikes in the last 10 years. And typically, they do result in a reduction of overall crashes and severe crashes compared to signals. Now, we're actually comparing to an all-way stop. Typically, the crash rates for a single-lane roundabout are very similar to what you get on an all-way stop. And just the overall effectiveness for roundabouts in Minnesota, a pretty comprehensive study that MnDOT performed. Looked at 24 different roundabouts. Some were converted from all-way stops to roundabouts. Some were from two-way stops to roundabouts. Some were from signals to roundabouts. But the net reduction in crashes and injuries is significant. applying that type of a traffic management tool here, we can expect that we achieve some of those benefits. Kind of recapping, you've got a lot of roundabouts in town, so you've maybe seen some of this type of literature before, but the safety in a roundabout is really achieved because you've reduced the number of conflict points that vehicles experience as they navigate through the intersection. On the left is a typical intersection, and you see all the lines and the dots represent conflict points. So all of these black dots are where vehicle paths would cross in an intersection, and they represent crossing conflicts that have the potential to result in personal injury, more so than some of the other types of crashes. In a typical intersection, there's 32 conflict points for vehicles. In a roundabout, we're down to about 8. For pedestrians, similarly, in a roundabout, you've got 2 crossing conflicts in a simple roundabout like these, as opposed to in a conventional intersection, about 4 for each crosswalk. So there's just a sheer opportunity for with less conflicts results in a more safe condition. The other benefit of roundabouts, of course, is that they slow vehicles to a point where if you do have a crash, it's a less severe crash, and injury crashes and fatalities become a rarity rather than commonplace. Benefits for pedestrians at roundabouts, shorter crossing distance. Pedestrians don't have to look in one direction to see what's in conflict. At typical intersection, drivers tend to be looking one way for vehicle conflicts and not looking for pedestrians in the other direction, which sometimes ends up in conflict with the pedestrians. And then the pedestrians are able to get the attention of drivers, and drivers can get the attention of pedestrians. Crossings at the roundabout are offset from circular roadway, so the drivers are dealing with vehicular conflicts separate from the pedestrian conflicts. I've got an example of a mini roundabout. This one was built up in Shakopee by Scott County and in the city of Shakopee, I think in 2014. This is similar in size and setting for the mini roundabouts that you'd be considering at 7th and 12th on Columbus. I mentioned the offset of the crosswalks from the circulatory roadway. So this mentioned here allows a vehicle leaving the roundabout stopping space before the crossing point so that the rest of the roundabout can continue to function. The roundabouts need to be lighted to be safe. So the conflict points at the circle and probably out here at the split islands would be illuminated so that the roundabout is quite visible to drivers. It's recognized as a unique intersection type. The coloration that was constructed here is twofold. One might be for aesthetic purposes, but more importantly, to again raise awareness for drivers that they're entering a condition that might be different than a conventional intersection. This particular roundabout was built, like I said, in 2014, and we've learned from city and county staff that some of the results weren't as good as expected in terms of crash rates. So this had a higher crash rate than expected, although those crashes were property damage because of low speeds. The failure to yield by drivers is kind of the behavior that was observed to be contributing to those crashes. One action taken was to install additional yield signs on the split island to raise awareness again of the driver's responsibility to yield. So here's a case that's similar, maybe in physical condition, conditions to the ones you're considering. The roundabout at Beerling serves a greater volume than the intersection you're considering. Maybe 40% more traffic running through this intersection than Columbus and 12th and 7th. It also had a higher crash rate as always stopped prior to the changeover. So some of the accident reduction that was desired from this was achieved. This accident severity reduction was achieved. So I think that's the last of my slides. There's certainly do that in question. Sure, absolutely. Mr. Johnson asked if I just introduce myself, give you a little more background. I've been in the transportation industry for 35, 36 years. I spent 8 years at Henry County and then another 6 years at the city of St. Paul before joining the consulting world. I've been working projects like this for the entire time of my career. The last 20 plus have been serving communities like you and county and state level projects with safety improvement type projects. So I have done a lot of work in school areas. In fact, when the middle school was looking for, the district was looking for help with the middle school in terms of the bus activity and parent dropout activity, I assisted staff in coming up with those kind of solutions. So, they've been at this for a long while, done things right and I've done things wrong, and if they can bring the right things to the table.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and I apologize for maybe not covering that portion of it, so Mike sort of said that well. In fact, Mike has been doing work here in New Prague, with New Prague here for many years, actually before I've even started working here. Well, I'm going to jump into kind of the last items on the agenda here. The next one, talking about the project cost. So those of you that were at the neighborhood meeting, city's numbers are a little bit different. If you recall at the neighborhood meeting, I did not have included with it the mini roundabout cost. We talked about mini roundabouts, but we have not added it to the cost of the project. And we have some sanitary sewer improvements that were added into the project as well. I should have mentioned that before. There's an area on 3rd Avenue off of Main Street over by the railroad flip side. If you're familiar with that area, we are looking to reconstruct some sanitary sewer. It made sense to include it with this project and get it completed before the Main Street project the following year. So with that said, here's a summary of the, again, the cost and as a percentage of the project. This is what we call total estimated project cost. This includes construction, engineering, administrative, fiscal costs, etc. So about 1.1, almost 1.2 million for the city's local improvements without the roundabouts. If we add the roundabouts in, there is some work that was already planned at those intersections. So this is the cost that would be in addition to that. So we estimated about $600,000. I do want to point out that this is an economy of scale. So by doing this project together, doing the roundabouts, if we choose to do the roundabouts with the project, this is what we're estimating for the cost and add those 2 roundabouts. If this was done after the fact, because we don't have an economy of scale of a large project that we're in the vicinity doing, we're probably looking at adding easily a couple $100,000 for the cost of those, to add those at a future date. So anywhere from $800,000 plus to do it in the future. Again, economy of scale, etc. The improvements on County Road 37 are estimated just over 1.9 million. Stormwater improvements throughout the whole project area, just under 600,000. Water system improvements, about 21,000. Sanitary sewer improvements, about 88,000. And again, those sanitary sewer improvements that I mentioned, that reconstruction of sewer over on 3rd Avenue Northwest, at about 85,000. Total project is estimated at $4.5 million. So, how do we propose to pay for this project? Probably seen this slide, for those who've been around and have seen it in the past. Fund project, local projects like this, the funding sources that really cities have for doing these types of projects are the general levy, which is the citywide property taxes that everybody pays in the community. Fees, so for the sewer, water, and stormwater improvements, those funds are proposed to come out of those respective utility funds. Assessments to the benefiting properties. Outside funding, which isn't always the case, but in this case, we have funding from the county, but we also have, the city has an obligation for costs on that kind of road as well. Or as I show here in that last line, some fair and reasonable balance of all of those funding options to make a project like that happen. So this is how it's laid out in the feasibility study. Respective sanitary sewer utility fund, water utility fund, stormwater utility funds paying for those costs. Assessments estimated at just under 1.3 million. General levy, so the citywide property tax is contributing to just over 788,000, and county funding of just under 2 million. Again, to reach that total estimated project cost of 4.5 million. Talk a little bit about the assessment policy and how the assessments work. So again, the city's policy and practice for all past projects is to, again, to look at some consistent, uniform, and fair equitable treatment for doing assessments. The city has a policy of using single-family residential properties as a base rate. So treating all single-family residential properties the same. Residential unit being that base rate, and treating multifamily, institutional, commercial, and industrial properties different. They're actually compared to a residential property in terms of how their size, and then assessed on equivalent units, and then those properties are assessed at 30% more than the residential, and I'll have another example of that. So the city's practice and policy is to have their assessment based on a fixed base rate. What I mean by that is establishing an assessment rate up front in the beginning of the project that's consistent from project to project, year to year. So if you recall, I mentioned that there was a project that was done in 2015 that was a mill and overlay project with some pavement replacement project with a small area of mill and overlay. That there were rates set up and established during that project, and that we are carrying those same rates over to this project. So we're treating that project, that neighborhood, that's consistent with this year and these neighborhoods. That rate is a set rate to, based on benefit. And again, carrying that rate consistently year to year, neighborhood to neighborhood, project to project. If there's a fluctuation in the project, costs come in high, that's picked up by the general levy. If costs start coming low, the savings is witnessed by the general levy, which again is this overall city contributing to the cost of the project. Kind of more of a graphic, illustrative way of showing this again. If we assume that this hatched line is the streets that are being improved. Let's pretend these properties on the top side here are residential, again, single unit, etc. Corner properties are treated, this example where this street is being improved, but this one is not. This property would be treated as a half a unit here, and someday in the future it would be treated as a half a unit on the other side. So this one would be assessed a half a unit under this project. This residential property would be assessed a half unit here, they'd have a full unit, consistent with the interior lines. Also with their residential is, again, typical single-family residential property, doesn't matter on size. If it's 70 foot, 80 foot, 90 foot, 100 foot, they're all treated the same equally and assessed equally. For the non-single-family residential properties, multifamily, institutional, commercial, they're treated as an equivalent. So if in this example, you can see this, ooh, I didn't touch anything. Go back up here a little bit. So this property here, this commercial property is the equivalent of three single-family residential properties. It would be treated as 3 units multiplied by its rate, which is 30% higher than the residential rate. Again, same thing on corners, basically treated equivalent for corner lots as well. So what does that mean? When I mentioned assessment rates, again, these are the rates that are consistent with the project that was done in 2015. The reclamation or payment replacement rate, which is what we're referring to on County Road 37. These are the rates that were assessed in 2015. $4,600 per unit for the single-family residential properties, or $5,980 per unit for all other properties. Again, this is 30% and 30% more than a single-family residential property. For all the local streets, which are just getting the mill and overlay, it's a less intensive project. It's a quality project, but it's not the same level of project as the pavement replacement. So it's going to cost less and therefore should be assessed less. Proposed unit is $2,114 per unit for the single-family residential, or $2,748 per unit on all other properties. A little bit about the assessment process. Again, this is not the assessment hearing. This is the feasibility hearing for the council to decide whether to proceed with the project. The assessment process would happen in the fall. There would be additional information sent out. Again, those rates would not change. Those would be proposed now and intended to be carried forward to the assessment hearing in the fall. So again, notification will be sent out in the fall for anybody that will be levied an assessment against the property. There will be an assessment hearing in the fall of 2019. The way the assessment work is assessments can be payable interest-free within the 30 days after the adoption of the assessment, which would be in the fall of 19. Person doesn't have to pay the assessment in that first 30 days, only if they want to do it with interest-free. Otherwise, unpaid assessments are to be levied to the respective counties, payable with property taxes over the 15 years, with the first payment due in 2020. The interest rate is not yet known. That'll be known when the notification of assessments are sent out in the fall. That'll be based on the interest rate that the city gets when they sell the bond for funding the project. There is an options for deferred assessments on homesteaded properties. Not to get into a lot of details, but their eligibility based on senior citizens, deferment by disability, military leave, etc. It's not a forgiveness of the assessment. It just means payment doesn't have to be made while that person has the assessment deferred. Assessment still accrues interest. It's still payable or due upon sale of the property, things like that. But there is an option there for somebody that's in a financial hardship or in difficulty to pay. Schedule for the project. Again, we're here right now on November 19th, the public hearing. The council again will consider authorizing preparation of plans and specs. We're proposing to bring back plans for approval by the council to authorize advertising. That will be the February 4th of next year. We'd advertise in February for bids, public bids. Bids would be opened in March. Right now, tentatively proposed for 8th of March. Council would consider receiving the bids and awarding the bid in March. One thing we try to do too, when plans are complete before the project starts construction, to hold another open house for residents to come in and see what's planned. We propose to do that in April. And basically be looking to kicking this thing off in in May. Again, assessment hearing would be in October, and then assessments due to the counties in November of 19. The question a lot of people have that in terms of the construction, again, for the mill and overlay streets, this is relatively not very disruptive. The few cases that there is some curb that's being replaced because it's either in bad shape, it's maybe we have grade issues and we're taking out a small stretch of curb that happen to be in front of your driveway. There would be a period there where it might be more convenient to park on the street or something like that. A lot of people won't even see some of that. But some curb replacement, if there happens to be a catch basin maybe next to somebody's property that's being replaced or worked on, you'll see a little disruption there. But again, for the mill and overlays area, generally not very disruptive. Getting around most of the time will be easy, maybe the day when the paver is coming through, during that period of time until it's rolled and packed. Those would be times like that where a little minor inconvenience. For County Road 37, a little bit more disruptive because there's more pavement that has to come out, a little more control of traffic needs to be done, ramping driveways, things like that until the road gets kind of built. But it's really short duration. I really see the bulk of this work happening probably in the months of June and July. And it won't be in once they're in one area, they'll be in and out fairly quick. There'll probably be some of the utility rehab work will probably be taking place early in the project, probably in that May period, May and early June. And then at that point, it's really a paving project from there on out. The roundabouts, if you choose to do that, will be a little bit more of a challenge from a traffic control standpoint. It'll obviously have to be done after school's out, and there'll still have to be traffic control to get traffic around through certain areas because the intersection pretty much will have to be closed off during the bulk of that construction. They won't be done at the same time. Obviously, we don't want to close both of those intersections at the same time. So again, some of the details haven't been worked out until we really know that we're proceeding that way. But again, I imagine that the construction of those roundabouts will pretty much be completed within a month. So I can see June in one and July in the other. I mean, most of that work will be relatively quick. Because we are pretty much fitting within the existing footprints of those intersections and the curb lines that are there for those mini roundabouts. So if that's it, I will open it to the council for questions, and then at that point, turn it over to the public.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Anyone have any questions for Chris or Mike?
I just have one. The catch basins in the roundabouts, right now they're right in the middle, I think on Columbus and 7th. Where do you put them then?
They're actually back on the, what we'll call the returns on the curves on the radii.
Oh.
And most of those should be fine. The only thing is we need to make sure we can't put a pedestrian ramp right at those catch basins, but they should work fine where they're at. So we'll move the head ramps rather than the catch basins.
Okay. Chris, I guess for at least my edification, but I've had a lot of people question, and when we were talking about the 2020 project, about what is a mini roundabout? People vision the roundabouts we have now, but they're actually obviously different than those. Can you kind of just explain the difference?
Yeah, good question, thanks. What? No, I didn't bring the video. Well, we can back up a minute. Well, let's not do that. So the mini roundabouts, like 2 mini roundabouts proposed on the Main Street 2020 project at First Avenue Southeast and at Columbus Avenue. They fit within the existing footprint, or basically the existing right-of-way. They don't take as much space. Obviously, for this project, full-size roundabouts are an option. The issue is the full-size roundabouts would take more right-of-way. We'd have to acquire more right-of-way on the corners. They definitely take more space. There's an advantage to them because they're larger. It puts more distance between the entering and exiting spots on the roundabout. Makes it a little easier to yield, things like that. The advantage to the minis is they will fit within the existing curb lines that are up there right now. So we don't even have to replace a lot of the curb. We just have to do some lane configuration, adding in those islands to make it fit. And I'm going to bring up the one there in shot. Probably it's easier for people to visualize. So it's hard to picture there, but if you look at an existing right-of-way that we have to work within, and this one's actually a little larger probably than we're going to see on Main Street. I don't know the exact interior diameter and stuff, things like that. So hopefully that answers your question, or maybe Mike can add more to it, or.
Are they basically flat over the middle then, or?
That's a great observation. That's one of the big differences between a mini and a full-size are that large vehicles, like a semi-truck, can be served here, but they are designed with the intent of driving that truck right over that island. So larger vehicles will traverse that island. As a full-size roundabout, the intent is to, of course, bring around with their back wheels right down the truck.
Okay.
Yeah, like Mike was saying, it does accommodate them within the existing layout, but again, they are traversable. The ones we have proposed on Main Street are relatively low in height, the approach islands as well as the center island. It's more for visual rather than an obstacle.
Krista, I just have a few questions that I'm coming in new, so just to get clarification. Did you say both roundabouts would be the same size?
Generally speaking, there's a little bit difference.
And
Just to be a little more precise, the mini roundabout at 7th would be 100-foot diameter because the street widths there will allow that size. Up at 12th, it'd be about 82 feet.
And then, Mike, it appears the picture in some roundabouts have a curved approach to them. Is that what's being proposed here to slow traffic down, or are we not changing the direction of the road?
Each of the speed limit, the posted speed limit, the operating speed on each of the legs kind of differs. So for instance, up at 12th, the east leg is a 55-mile-per-hour approach. So there we would want to set up that curve, the reverse curve coming into it, to slow traffic down before they get to the.
So that's anticipated already?
Absolutely.
And then, Chris, I think last week we talked about the crash numbers in the table in the feasibility study. The table shows that the crashes would increase, and the information here, I think, is this specifically dealing with just pedestrian accidents, or on page 10 of the feasibility is what I'm referring to?
Councilmember, in the study, I think the crash rate for roundabouts was depicted slightly higher than for all-way stops. So when you do the math for how many vehicles are entering, you end up with a little higher number of crashes. But coupled with that is you should get a lower kind of severity, less personal injuries, more property damage crashes, less damage, even though maybe a few more on the average.
And that's what I just wanted to make sure that we're documenting, or at least reflecting in the hearing, that what we talked about before, this, you provided some data to show that the pedestrian injuries would actually decline. Is that accurate? Or I'm sorry, personal injury.
Personal injuries, right.
Would reduce.
Correct.
Is what the stats would show us anyway.
Correct.
The number of crashes might increase, but personal injury would be less.
That's accurate.
Okay. Could the roundabouts be bid as a separate alternate in the project?
Yeah, well, yes, it can, but it adds a few more challenges. I mean, it's basically, we may have two different designs going into a project, but anything's possible.
Sure. And then I'm not an advocate for this, but I'm just wondering, was a sidewalk considered on the north side of 7th by the baseball field?
In terms of adding sidewalk,
Right.
it had not been considered. It might be something that we could work with the school district on. I think they actually own the trail and the side, like the trail in Columbus, and some of the sidewalks on their properties. It's something certainly that could be added that hasn't even been discussed.
It has that funny, I believe it has that funny kind of stop. It just kind of stops at the corner.
Yep, I'm aware of, yep, I know exactly what you're referring to, and it crosses them to the other side, gets them on sidewalk on the south side.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen, very much for the information. I guess right now I'm going to open the floor up for any public comment. Again, if you please be so kind to come to the podium, state your name and address, and state any question or concerns you may have, and hopefully we'll be able to answer those for us. Again, the floor is open.
My name is Matt Burbach, 206 5th Street Southeast, kind of off of Columbus there. I guess one of the things that comes to mind, so I'm trying to keep an open mind about the project, and I don't really see the need for some of the stuff that we're talking about. Like, I've walked all over New Prague before, I've ridden bike all over New Prague, I have 10 kids, so we get around, and safety is a concern of mine with that. But I just really haven't seen a big need for these roundabouts when things seem to be working okay. And I think one of the slides pointed out that the stop control mechanism is okay at the present point. I don't know if maybe in the future it's something that we consider a roundabout alternative, kind of like you had mentioned. So that's kind of on my mind. On 5th Street Southeast, I don't really see a need for sidewalks. Is it sidewalks or repaving that they're looking to do? Maybe that's a question for
Chris, what
you
is it?
gentlemen.
Yeah, on 5th Street Southeast, it is only pavement, or pavement rehab, so mill and overlay. The only sidewalk work on the local streets is to bring pedestrian ramps into ADA compliance, where we have not proposed any additional new sidewalk in where it doesn't already exist.
Just repaving then?
Correct.
So I guess from that standpoint, we haven't really seen a need for repavement on that street. My kids play outside all the time, and the street seems to be in pretty good shape, from my own opinion. But so I guess that's my what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Craig Molson. I'm here on behalf of the district, for the school. I'm the operations director. Mr. Dittmer couldn't be here tonight, so he asked me to come. One thing we did talk about, and I talked about with Tim, was my boss, Mr. Dittmer, that in the study itself, it did not talk about events at the high school, at Falcon Ridge, at the middle school, and during the fall months especially, we sometimes have triple events. We'll have something going on at the gymnastics center, we'll have a football game at the stadium, we could have a volleyball section tournament like we had last fall at the high school, and in that case, the backups, or the queues as you call them, are huge. Our parking lot at the high school becomes totally jammed, and as well as the middle school itself, that 7th and Columbus area. So, of course, the district is concerned about the financial impact of the roundabouts, but we think, and we do support investigating them and looking at it further. If anybody's been there in the morning, in the afternoons, you know what it's like. It's a mess. We've got people, we've got 32 buses in our fleet. we run over 75 routes through those two intersections we're talking about every day. So it is substantial, and the traffic is something to definitely, that could improve. As far as everything else goes with the project, we really don't seem to have, somebody asked about the sidewalk, Bruce, you asked about the sidewalk on 7th. That's something we've been looking at as a district for a while, because we have that protected crosswalk up by the new bus garage. I would like to see, and we would like to see a sidewalk down to that 7th and Columbus intersection, just for the safety of the kids using those fields. So with that said, I guess we would like to see those roundabouts go forward with the financial impact up front, and so that we can, that's all I got.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, go ahead.
For the 27895 Long Street. My backyard touches Naylor Avenue. What's going to happen there?
Glenn, the Naylor, where's that?
Naylor Avenue.
Oh, it's tar.
Past Ravens.
Oh,
It's been band-aided for years.
Well, Naylor Avenue is added on, it was included in there too. I didn't get into the details on that. Naylor is actually what we're doing a reclaim and resurface on that, basically to hold it together until eventually something else more major would happen out there. So we are proposing what we call a reclamation, grind it up, and then resurface it.
You going to address any of the drainage issues?
At this time, no. I mean, nothing.
8 years ago, the city was going to take care of issues out there. 8 years have passed, now you're going to just lay a road over it, you can walk away again?
Well, if there's something that we can easily address, if there's culverts that are clogged or something like that, we would consider it, but I guess we weren't aware of any issues beyond the fact that it needed resurfaced.
You know, 8 years ago, you got some grant or something to repair that road, and nothing ever got put into it. If you look back in the records, that's when the city acquired that road, plus to get money for it.
So this, what he's referring to, and Mayor, you had asked about this, I think, a meeting or two before. The city had acquired, or took that over because we were able to designate that as a state aid route, where the city gets some eligible funding, having it on a route as a state aid route. But it's not at a point where we're ready to do major improvements on it. If it's something that we need to look at, we need to take a step back and take a look at something more complex.
So does that mean 8 years ago you frauded the state because you took money? And it never got,
no.
You took money for the road and it never got put into it, correct?
The explanation is a lot more complex than that. So to get back to what we call state aid streets, the city has a whole network of streets. And for 20% of the streets in the community, they can designate them as what we call minor collector or collector routes. So that one was identified in the transportation plan as a logical connection with 6th Avenue, or 6th Street connects to the west, so we connect to Naylor. And so it made sense to designate that as one of the collector routes, which we could get the funding no matter where we put it, but we chose it to do there because back 10 years ago, when we were looking at potential growth in the city, that looked like a logical spot for a collector route in the city's network of streets. Well, development hasn't occurred yet, so with the need to do something more major there hasn't happened yet. But we need to do a resurface on it because the road condition is in need, and that its intent is to do that now to carry it to a point where something more major is happening. And that's most likely going to happen when some type of development occurs out in that area. Yeah, and there is no assessments proposed on that one because this is strictly a short-term maintenance need that's out there right now.
So Chris, basically, in a nutshell, we did not actually get funds. We did not actually get money for that. We just designated it so that we have the capability of getting funds in the future, but we did not get a check to do something on that street.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, what you're insinuating, we did not get a physical check and not use it for that.
The only time the city will ever
But
get...
that's what one of your ex-employees told me, that that's why they needed to acquire that street to get money to do other projects.
So the city will only get money for that street when it is improved and brought up to a certain standard. And that's not going to logically happen until there's pressure from development out on that area. So right now, because it's under the city's jurisdiction, something needs to be done with it. And so we'll call it a short-term maintenance overlay with what's proposed out there.
So then I'm still asking them, so why did the city acquire a street that goes nowhere to anything for the city?
Well, if we were to, we wouldn't so this gets into a very complex situation in terms of the state aid system. The way the rules were written 10 years ago, it made sense for us to take that on. Today, we would not.
So when
we're
it doesn't
kind
get
of, so we're kind of,
I will get assessed for that road regardless.
I don't know what the situation will be when that happens. Most likely, it will be developer driven, so what happens at that point, I can't tell you. Well, often when the first development occurs, a lot of those roadways get built by the developer at their cost. But again, we don't know what the circumstances or the situations will be at that time and when that will occur.
What are the drainage issues?
Yeah.
Can you just shed some light on that?
Just, if it rains an inch, look at the north side of that road, there's water all the way down.
In the roadway?
Not in the roadway, in the ditch.
Oh, in the ditch, okay.
Mosquitoes, you know, good breeding ground for mosquitoes. And I've been taking care of that ditch, trying to keep the grass down on the whole north side there that the city owns. You know, so my neighbors can walk their dogs because nobody does anything out there. It's like a street that the city owns and they ignore it. I'm just want to let everybody know what I think.
Thank you. Any other comments?
David Paul Lane, 604 Burgess Lane. Wondered if any consideration was given into, again, bicycle lanes on 37 or out towards the school or anything, and a minimum marking or maybe something in addition to marking bicycle lanes?
I guess we hadn't talked about doing anything other than what's there. There's certainly options. There's certainly options there. There's enough width there that most of it's being used by parking right now. It's, again, something, if there's an interest, we can certainly look into it as options.
You know, 37, are you talking
On
about?
County Road 37, that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, there's enough width there, but it would obviously impede on parking potentially. But I don't think you see a lot of parking on 37 either, so.
If we would look into that, Jim, would we have to put no parking in if we had a bike lane?
It depends on where you place them. Sometimes bike lanes are set off the parking lane and right in the, next to the traffic lane. So it all depends on what the engineer would say where we're gonna place it and have that bike route.
So Chris, are you saying there's enough space for both, or you, no?
We don't know.
Okay.
There's certainly a lot of width there. Look at how wide it is. There's a lot more than 2 lanes of road. If it's something that there's an interest to look at further, I mean, it could be something that we might discuss maybe with the park board and look at what would striking options be.
Would that be narrowing the lanes? Well, you know,
Yeah,
so-
potentially, and that's a good way to slow speed down just a little bit too, turn the car.
Would that need to be going through the county? Because that's a county road, and then, even though I know eventually it's going to get given back to the city, but would the county be involved in that decision?
Well, I can't speak for the county, I don't know, Tony, do you want to comment on anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'd work with the city on that. We'd look at it as really a city decision long term, so it wouldn't be one way, one change it back. So in our working with the city, we look at it as a long term and really with the city's desire to have that and design our standards.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Victoria Pauly, Days Life, and I just had some comments to add to that. It just seems like it'd be a really great opportunity for our city to, while we're doing this project, to encourage all residents to be more active with bicycling and healthy and promote that as a citywide project. And that road is going to 3 schools, and it's going to the fitness center and aquatic center. And there's a lot of, and all the athletic activities that are going on. And there is parking issues. If people were biking, we would maybe have so many parking issues too. So that long-term, big picture, that might be a good place to start a citywide health project.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay.
Ondich, Helena Township, on the Naylor Avenue in Ravenstream addition, we're doing overlaying there. And we kind of were approached about the city doing overlay project on Naylor Avenue at the same time the Ravenstream project is being done. I think in March or so, we're going to let the bids out for Ravenstream. Just to bring up, if that would be a time the city would want to work with, I suppose, after the township engineer and the city engineer, just so you know what's going on.
Okay.
Wayne, do you have any idea how long we own? Is it just to the north city line along Naylor from
Yeah,
19?
part of it is gravel.
But how much does the city own? Does it own all the way to the end of the city limits? Or Glenn, maybe you know?
Just up to 6th Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
The gravel part, not every time the township grader is out, but sometimes it covers that gravel part, but not every time. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I guess I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
I got a second by Kay Wilcox. If there's no other comments, all in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, the public hearing is closed. So now we need to address the resolution, whether or not to go forward with the proposed 2019 street project. And I guess it's kind of a twofold thing, to go with the project and to include roundabouts or not. Is that fair to say, Chris? Okay. So does anyone have any other comments or questions? So Chris or Mike, or in regards to the resolution at hand?
I'd just like to add that I would like to include the roundabouts. I know that as a person that drives my 10th grader to school every morning, how terrible it is and backed up. And witnessed it during games, as Craig said in his presentation. But I think it also would really help. There's a lot of, and I've been guilty of it myself, but a lot of people turn down Phillip Parkway. They avoid Columbus. They'll go down Phillip Parkway to Heritage and then down Heritage. And I see multiple cars doing that just so they can pop out closer to the actual intersection. So I think it would alleviate some of that traffic on that early morning and afternoon traffic through the neighborhood, which I would think most of the neighbors would want to see.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Sean on that. Having gone through many roundabouts, I'm convinced that they are much safer. And I think in those two areas, it's important to go ahead with it.
Okay.
I was wondering if we were a little premature as far as our statistics, but I think the facilities manager makes a strong statement that the school sees a definite need, so I would be in support of it.
Okay.
Chris, I'm just wondering if you could comment on the need for the project. I know the gentleman asked about the need, and I'm coming on new here, but there was a determination, or if there's a need and it's also part of capital plan, I'm assuming.
Are you talking about 37?
The whole project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe just to review, my understanding is there's regular road maintenance as part of a program that's long-term. So the needs are addressed, so there's not an overwhelming, big need of projects. And maybe you could just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I thank you for asking that, because I kind of forgot to hit on that item. It was one of the things I wanted to bring forward. I talked about pavement preservation, but I didn't explain kind of the need and the reasoning. Again, from an engineering standpoint, we talk about pavement management, pavement preservation, where in theory, you construct a road in year 0, and 20, 25 years out, you do a pavement maintenance project on it, a mill and overlay, we preserve that pavement and that road bed for another 20 plus years. It's the most cost-effective way to do it. If we leave it sit longer, it'll deteriorate more to the point we can't do anything more with it. It'll step up to another level of project, which again is maybe a pavement replacement or even a full reconstruction. So by doing it in a timely manner, it's a better long-term investment for the community, for the taxpayers, for the residents. These streets were identified and chosen based on age and road conditions. So between Public Works and Engineering, we selected the streets logically in their location, geography, age, and pavement condition. And again, if we wait longer, the ones that are mill and overlay will be something different, more costly, and more expensive for everybody.
Could you also comment about the county's contribution, because that's something unique to this project, isn't it?
Yeah, well, again, the project, County Road 37 is a county road, but the city does have, because of the county's cost participation policy with all the communities within the county, the city has a share of the cost of this project. So contribution, a fair amount of contribution for the project. The county's paying the larger share, they're paying $2 million for this project. But the city obviously has to contribute to it, mostly for sidewalk improvement, storm sewer, as well as some of the curbs, things like that.
I think you should elaborate a little bit that eventually the county is going to give the road back to the city of New Prague, and part of this process is that we were going to bring the road up to the standard that both parties can agree before we take it back.
Yeah, so this is scheduled to be what we call a turn back at the end of 2019. So once this is constructed, the road will get turned back from the county to the city and become under the jurisdiction of the city, and would be assigned as a state aid route in addition to that. So obviously, the process we're going through is come to agreement on that level of improvement and contribution, and then basically the city's taking over a Superior Road at that point, because the city's going to inherit maintenance on that long term. And again, this is common practice. This jurisdictional transfer, turnbacks is happening at all levels, county to state to county, county to cities, et cetera.
And also the main thing is that for the 2020 project also is County Road 37 is going to be the main northern route to direct traffic out of the Main Street area while the 2020 project is in progress, the Main Street project.
So yes, County Road 37 is intended to be the westbound detour for Main Street during the 2020 project. So there's some advantage to having it ahead of time. Mike wanted me to mention too, in our discussions with the county, it made sense for the city to consider leading this project, including it with the city's project. A couple reasons: we're under control. We are going to inherit this road long term. Again, we're under control of what's happening. And it was a good fit for the city's project. You know, they over the portion of the project. Well, it stayed as
And I just want to make a statement that, you know, we kind of put our road improvement projects on hold for a couple years to kind of prepare ourselves for the Main Street project in 2020. I think we're going to go back onto our improvement plan, and what is it, 2021 or?
Yeah, we have 3 projects identified in 21, 22, and 23. Those are reconstructs in the neighborhoods east of Columbus. And then I think we have overlays, again, preservation projects identified in 24, 25.
So this isn't just a one-time deal. This is just finishing a plan that was implemented, I think, what, 2008, Kate, I think is roughly the timing. You know, so we just took a few years off because we knew that the 2020 project needed a lot of time for planning and getting all that in works, because that's going to obviously change the landscape of our downtown. So I just want to make that statement.
Chuck, if I may, I can address Matt's comment about 5th Street Southeast. I live on 6th Street Southeast, just one block south of you. I've watched that street. In fact, I was in the home when that street was first constructed 25 years ago, 30, something like that. And I've noticed, at least on our street, that the pavement bituminous was starting to split, and over the years, every year they'd come in and put more tar down there to seal it up, and each year the crack just got a little bit wider. It's the point now where it definitely needs replacement, because if you don't do it now, you're going to be doing it in the near future, which means that it's going to cost the city and us a lot more to take care of it. Now we have, as Chris has said, an economy of scale, and we can do it at a cheaper price. I've also noticed that a lot of the curbing is starting to break up, and at least in front of my driveway, most of that, if I read the white lines right, will have to be replaced. I know, because I've almost broken some shock absorbers going up that too fast. So, yeah, they need it now, or we're going to pay more in the near future.
Okay.
I have just one more quick question, Chris. What would how would we go about getting the bike lane on 37? Would that be the direction from the council in this resolution, or is that just something that we could take a look at and bring it back before the council once the project's done?
Yeah, I think if you want to provide that direction, we can again work with staff and look at it and bring something back. And inevitably bring it back even before we move back plans in February. To just show you is it feasible or not, and, what's our recommendation. And, I guess I would like to, check with Ken, I guess is something we should go to the park board or something too, such as the trail committee, I believe.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, if that's the direction you want, I think, yes.
I'd be in favor for it. I'm just kind of curious with the rest of the council.
Not only the sidewalk, but look at bike lane, what can be done with that. I'd also like to ask Mike or Ken, can you look up to see what happened with Naylor when we took that over? Was there anything in the agreement with the township as to what we were going to do?
Other than annexation, no agreement, and it was a different needs-based formula for the state aid roads at the time, that it was to the benefit at the time to take that over for a road that had improvement needs, and it's not how the formula works anymore, but I don't know that we've completely ignored it. We've done snow plowing and different things out there, and we know it needs to be repaved at this point. So yeah, long-term, the solution is not, but with the further development of Raven Stream and that neighborhood out towards Naylor, that's when the time would be to make a permanent improvement over there.
I understand cost-wise it'd be most efficient to let it go until development happens.
It could be, I don't know, it could be 2 years, it could be 10 years. That's the tough.
What we're proposing to do out there is going to make it a lot nicer road to drive, but it's not going to go to the extent that you would in a brand new development as far as doing subcuts, putting down fabric, probably putting in utilities or crossings. That's why we chose to go the route we're going, is because the cost is considerably less, but still we'll get a number of years of a very rideable road on it.
Is there a way to address that water in the ditch? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with it. I haven't been out there on that road, but I'll try to do that this week. But is there a way that we can take a look at it at least and see if there's a solution
Sure.
to the problem?
Yep.
Chris, the sidewalk, can that be looked at the same way as what Sean was talking about in that issue? Can that be brought into the project if that wants to be done? I'm a little confused when Craig is mentioning it's on the school's property, but my understanding that it would be in the county's easement area.
We can certainly look at it. We have, so you're referring again to the sidewalk on the north side of County Road 37, west
Yes.
of Columbus, along the ball field.
Yes.
Where the tennis courts were, down to the bus garage. Yeah, for example, the trail on Columbus that goes north past the elementary school, that happens to be within semi in public right of way, semi on the school property, and it's owned by the school. And I understand that the sidewalks up by the high school, for example, are, even though they're in the public right of way, they are jurisdiction or owned or maintained by the school district. So we haven't gotten into the logistics of that stretch of sidewalk on that stretch of 37, and I think it's a matter to decide who pays for it or to be included as part of the project. And that's, I guess, something that hasn't been talked about, and it could become a recommendation for you guys as well. So something that certainly logistically could be done with the project.
Well, I don't want to get into history. Many years ago, that was a requirement of part of the new school, and it was built to put that road in, and we required it in planning and zoning many, many years ago. But certainly, if we have the school that's interested in doing it, I think we should promote it, is my opinion. Encourage improved safety that might occur there.
I'd agree as well.
Likewise.
Ken, I mentioned that email I got. I know part of the, some of that money that will be available is the safe route to school thing, so I'll forward you that email, so if that's some way that if bike lanes and that on 37, if we could get some I think it's actually federal money on the safe routes to schools that, through Region 9, I think it is, the email I got.
Probably not cost effective for this type of project.
You never gotta, you always gotta try, Chris.
Yeah, no, I agree, but yeah, having been through it before, it's,
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, if not, I guess I'll look for a resolution to approve the 2019 street project. I guess I'm going to go on the limb and say with the roundabouts included, along with some of the direction with the bike route and that sidewalk issue with on the north side of 37. So is anyone willing to make that motion?
Second.
Got a motion by Sean Ryan and second by Dave Brusick. If there's no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Thank you everyone for your comments.
Can I just raise a point of question? David, you received notice you are on the project for the assessments, are you not?
Yes, I am.
You may want to reconsider, and I just thought of when I was looking through the book, trying to make sure whether I knew that you were, that due to that, you may want to, or the council may want to consider re-voting on that with the possibility maybe consider abstaining.
I guess I don't understand why I would have a problem with it if...
I'm not the attorney, and
I'm not either.
no, and I guess this type of improvement requires on a resolution because it was a city initiative project. It requires a 4/5 council vote, which was 4 out of 5. Obviously, you have to vote for it. I'm only trying to think ahead where you're on this and you are impacted by an improvement project because there are assessments set and established in there. If we leave it as is, I would have to check tomorrow with the attorney's office to find out whether that was or wasn't an appropriate vote. So the question would be is if there's seemingly, based on that being 5-0, if you were to recuse yourself, then that 4/5 still would come with 4 of the 5 council members, assuming they voted unanimously for that, versus I might have to go back and check the legality of that with the city attorney. Then it would mean we have to come back and have a reconsideration of the action on that resolution. I don't know why I didn't put 2 and 2 together with your address and looking at that. And I was thumbing through the book trying to see, and that's why I just asked Ken Ondich. I thought in looking at that based on your comments, that you were on that route. And so I only bring that up from the standpoint that there could be a conflict of interest. And so in doing that, could choose to reconsider the vote in light of that, so David abstaining, and if there's still 4 out of the 5 council members, we can still have the 4/5 vote.
Do you want us to do a roll call?
I think maybe, I see what you're talking about, Mike, and I can see that there could be a possibility that somebody doesn't like this and bring a suit against it. I will recuse myself, but I think we should go back further and redo the motion so that I'm not part of that.
Yes.
That's what I'm bringing up, that in light of me raising the question, the council may want to reconsider their previous actions that they took on a 5-0 vote and reconsider it with you declaring that you are going to abstain from that action and then leaving the motion the second and the voting with the rest of the council.
Yeah, I will do that.
We normally try to stay ahead of these things, and I apologize. I just was thinking as I'm looking at the map and listening to your commentary that you were included in that area, and I probably should have been in touch with you ahead of this evening. That's my fault.
Well, no, Mike, because I should have realized it too, because there was one other situation 4 or 5 years ago that you suggested I abstain on. I had less to do with that than I do with this, so let's do it that way.
Fundamentally, it would require the council that everybody voted in favor of it, so the action would be a motion to reconsider an action on the previous agenda item. So it really is a motion to reconsider that you would approve, and then go forward with a motion and a second to approve the resolution with David declaring that he does not need to participate and he's going to abstain.
Okay. And would you like that second motion to be a roll call?
There will only be 4 people voting, so we can do that like we normally do. That
Okay.
action isn't dependent on that, but it's just a matter of David declaring that he's going to abstain from that. So your first action will be a motion to reconsider, motion and second to reconsider.
Okay, I guess I'll make a motion to reconsider based on the information that just was presented.
Second.
I got a second by Kay Wilcox. There's no other comments. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition?
I abstain.
Okay. So now we're back to square one, and again, we're looking for a resolution to approve the 2000 street project with the roundabouts included, along with the consideration of a bike safety lane and the extension of the sidewalk.
So moved.
Okay, got a motion by Sean Ryan.
Second.
I got a second by Kay Wilcox. Okay, there's no other comments. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition?
I abstain.
Okay, passes 4-0.
4-1.
4-1 with one. 4-1 with an abstaining vote by Councilman Boucher. Is that okay now, Mike? It's the first day at my job, so. All right, next thing on the agenda. Ken, I think you're taking this?
They clean your ditch out for you. That whole thing is.
Next item on the agenda is do a little introduction here, but we ultimately need a public hearing on the vacation of some easements that are located around Lot 1, Block 1 of Pond Addition. It's basically the area outlined in yellow here. This is a lot that has existed since 1997. Council conditionally approved the replat of Pond Addition into what is known as Pond Second Addition, which is the lot in the larger area, kind of outlining here on the overhead for everybody. So that was the replat of another one lot plat. So basically incorporating the original lot with some other land that Mr. Mike Weinandt purchased and was platting together to create a larger lot. One of the conditions of that plat approval was to vacate the easements from that initial original plat, and that's shown in yellow here. Back in October 15th, when the public hearing was scheduled for tonight's meeting, the ordinance was introduced that would vacate these easements around that initial lot. I do want to note that any easements underneath it are being immediately put back in place with 10 foot basically around the perimeter of the entire lot along Lexington, County 37, and then a portion of the west side of the lot, and then a much larger wetland and conservation easement around the remainder of the lot, covering the pond and our conservation buffer area. So that's really all I have to know on the background of this. We're still working through a couple of final items with Mr. Weinandt in getting that plat recorded, which this was one of the items that needed to be taken care of. But some of the other things have been completed, and we will continue to work with Mr. Weinandt until they are all wrapped up. Really done the title work in this matter, really at this point. With that, I can answer any questions the council could have, otherwise we can open the public hearing.
Anyone from the council have any statements or comments regarding this? If not, I guess I'll open the floor up for the public hearing. If you want to make any comments or statements, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and your question or concern.
My name is Ben Bartusek. I live at 305 Sunrise Avenue in New Prague, and I've lived in this town for 20 years. I did not know that property, I thought that was a park. I did not know that it became for sale. I don't know who they bought it from, but in my opinion, it should remain as a park. It's not buildable, it's too narrow. You put all kinds of restrictions, all kinds of property, and then you got a property there. It's really, if you're going to look at setback from the street and from that pond, there's enough room to build anything. And it's going to ruin the aesthetic value of that whole area. So I personally don't think it's in the best interest of anybody to build a house there. There's enough other property in the tri-county area to build a house. I don't see any reason why it has to be there. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you.
I can just address that real briefly. It is a narrow lot, not to particularly be concerning the vacation, but there is at minimum about 35 feet of depth on the building pad area outside of the wetland buffer and setbacks, and it does meet the minimum on-site setbacks. So the lots were purchased from Randy Kubish and Tom Topka. That's who Mr. Weinandt acquired this from.
Okay.
Are the conservation easements in place as of today?
We have the conservation easement drafted and in form. That was one of the requirements of the plat, and they will be recorded with the plan. Basically, have it drafted, and that's get recorded in sequence when we would have this vacation order filed, then the conservation easement, and then the plat would actually show the conservation easement document on the ground there. Mr. Weinandt did put up the signage, the buffer signage, if you drive by there, out on the property. So that has
Okay. Any other public comment? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second by Dave Brujek. All in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, the next item is adopting the ordinance. Now, would this be the second reading then?
second reading and adoption.
Okay. Anyone have any questions regarding this ordinance?
No, I think I'd just like to respond to Mr. Bartuszczyk. It's such a small spot, and New Prague, for a park, New Prague does not have any pocket parks. It'd be useless for us to pay the high bucks that they're asking for such a small area. And I agree, aesthetically, it's beautiful sitting there, but I don't think the city would have a use for it. The best case scenario would be the neighbors getting together and buying it as a private neighborhood park for themselves. So.
Okay. Any other comments?
I'll just say, Ben, I agree with you as well, aesthetically, but I don't think there's really anything we could do to prevent it if he purchased that lot and it was platted that way.
I think most people in town would agree with you, Ben. It should be a park or open space, but Sean told you why we can't, as did Kate.
Okay. If not, I guess I'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance, the second reading of the ordinance.
Second.
Okay, second by Dave Brujek. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Thank you, Ken. Next, Mike, or Chris, you're taking this too? Holy mackerel. Busy day, you might get overtime.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council.
You're right.
Before you is a consideration of another resolution regarding the Main Street, North Highway 19, 2020 the project. Real briefly, just to explain, if you recall that we actually held an improvement hearing for that project back in June of this year. So just like the hearing we have tonight, we had the hearing for the 2020 project back in June. Based on state statute, a project is required to be under contract within 1 year of the passing of that resolution. But because of the nature and size of that project, it's not going to be the case. We were looking at having that project bid out and under contract in about a year from now. There was actually a step we could have done. This is not usual. Most projects are under contract within a year after the improvement hearing. So there's a step we could have done, and that was to modify that resolution at that time. Based on the advisement of the attorney, they're recommending that we actually hold a second public hearing for the project, the improvement hearing, and pass a resolution that covers us from here through contract. Now, as it turns out, we are holding a public hearing at the December 3rd meeting, which is required as part of what's called the municipal consent process that MnDOT needs to go through for basically the city agreeing to the layout that we have prepared and have proposed. It's a kind of a formal, administrative, but a formal step that MnDOT wants taken by the city. So a public hearing has been ordered. You did it at the previous council meeting that required 30-day notice. This one, as part of the improvement process, only requires the 2-week notice. So basically what we're proposing to do is piggyback that public hearing, do it at basically the same time, and have you consider a revised resolution at the December 3rd meeting, basically reordering the improvement. And with that, we'll have a completion date or a date set forward that allows that thing to be under contract within that period. Hopefully that kind of makes sense.
But at the third, after the public, deciding on how the thing's going to look or, anything,
All you're doing is acting on the resolution that you passed back in June.
Okay.
And it's basically to extend that window until we have a contract. You will still have municipal consent that will be considered. It'll be at the 3rd meeting or the December 17th meeting. But then you will also have opportunities to approve final plans and authorize that for bid, which will be later on.
Okay.
So there'll certainly be other opportunities to see what's proposed exactly.
Will there be any MnDOT people at that?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
So we can voice our issues. I know David had one with the access route, and then I heard from another building owner, kitty corner from the Wells Fargo, which Dave was addressing. So I'd like to make those points known as well.
We
too.
will have that those MnDOT staff there.
Okay.
And they have been holding meetings in human properties. As you recall, as Chris mentioned, this is a statutory requirement that we hold municipal consent regarding the layout, and the reason that we have to is that there are entrances that are proposed to be closed, and there is right of way to be acquired, which necessitates the hearing. It looks like our map has fallen down, and we'll have to get back up for the meeting. But apparently that's the way that the project is. We continue.
Well, every time you get another step, you put another piece of lead on there, or what?
So yeah, we'll have to get that reposted. So what we're proposing to do is essentially hold the 2 public hearings in parallel, but they're really being performed for 2 different reasons. So basically, as Chris has mentioned, this call for the public hearing, the notices that have to be sent out, the hearing that we have to hold is all a repeat of the first process, just to change the date of the construction project.
Okay.
And just so you know, the city attorney indicated that procedurally, what he's wanting to do is to make sure we remove any and all avenues or opportunities that we could do something correct in the 429 process. So why he's having us to go back and redo this process.
Okay. Well, that's Scott. looking out for us.
Well, we had conversations, and I can assure you there were arguments on two different sides of the coin between engineering and legal when legal won out.
It usually happens, doesn't it?
As it should, for the most part. So it takes care of a small technicality, but we just didn't want to leave that meeting.
Okay. Any questions for either Chris or Mike regarding this?
No, I'll make a motion to propose a public hearing on December 3rd.
Okay, I'll second that. So I got a motion by Dave Brujek, second by Chuck Nicolai. If there's no other comments, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay. Thanks, Chris. I think you're done for the day, aren't you? You can get out of here, don't wait.
Oh, by
Next
the way,
on there.
thank you.
Mike, the next thing is the calendar. The only thing I had was obviously on the 22nd of January, you got a golf and a council meeting at the same time, same day. And one's at 6 and one's at 6:30. That would be my only concern, and I think we could get around it by maybe moving golf to the 29th.
Good.
I think they would be pretty amicable to do that. Besides that, I didn't have any other questions on any of the meeting schedules. They all kind of follow the same format that we've been.
But generally, other than some council meetings moving due to holidays, the only other unusual one that we typically don't see except the start of the new year is that the first council meeting of the year is required per the city charter to be held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday. So that's why you see that there. The other one, January moved because Martin Luther King holiday, the one in February moved because of the President's holiday. We have Labor Day, the other one, the council meeting moved because of that. So it's intended to, for the benefit of the public, to identify what our anticipated meeting schedule is for the calendar year. So we'll talk to the golf board and ask that they move from the 22nd to the 29th.
Yeah, that's the only conflict I saw. But besides that, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the 2019 calendar, and with the exception of checking with the golf board on the 29th, moving their meeting to the 29th from the 22nd.
Second?
Got a second by Kay Wilcox. There's no other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. Now we're at the consent. Did anyone have any questions, any corrections, issues with anything in the consent agenda?
Yeah, I have one. I have to go back and find out which minutes it was in. I think it's... It's on the November 5th council meeting, page 1079. It would be the second and third paragraphs regarding Strike Force Bowl. Neither of those paragraphs were discussed. These are minutes, as I think, from the Planning Commission, not the City Council. The Strike Force Bowl property was mentioned, but was said here was not said, if I recall correctly, at that council meeting.
I'll take the responsibility in that in trying to capture that is that I believe Planning Director Ondich mentioned that section that was part of the Planning Commission that had occurred, but he did mention that at the council meeting.
Yeah, that's right. The Strike Force Bowl property was mentioned, but
Darren wasn't here.
Darren was not here.
He was not here, but I did mention as written, so I think that is accurate. If you look back on my memo from that day, I almost, not quite verbatim, but I did summarize the council, or the Planning Commission meeting minutes, knowing that Darren had attended, and that we had ultimately referred the issue to be contacted outside of the meeting. So, yeah, I guess maybe it could be clarified that Darren wasn't actually at the meeting, but that was being.
He attended the October 24th Planning
Correct.
Commission meeting.
Yep, and it does say that, but I think we could maybe clarify that.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like it was at our meeting and that's what was said.
Correct, yep.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
Not that I have.
Anyone else have any questions or issues on anything in the consent agenda? Now, Bruce, you're aware of what the consent agenda is? A lot of... Okay. Okay. So if there's no other comments, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
You moved it?
I moved it.
Oh, okay, sir.
Yeah. And Kay Wilcox seconded?
Yeah.
Yes. So if there's no other comments on it, I guess I'll make a motion to, I guess, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay. Now we're at the fun part, miscellaneous. Patrick, you got anything?
Happy to say Thanksgiving.
Okay. Maggie? All right. Mitch, how are you doing?
I'm good.
All right. Rick?
Just Merry Christmas, great. Happy Thanksgiving.
Okay. Chris, anything else?
Thank you.
Jim?
Just that end of last week, I got the position for the police officer posted. So December 6th is the closing date on that.
Okay.
That'd be for a replacement of Hunter.
Bruce, welcome. Any comments?
I just wanted to give the council...
We really didn't want to hear about it. But go
you gotta listen. I just wanted to give you a quick update in regards to the service territory. We've converted about 733 customers in the last 3 weeks, and we have about 128 left, and they'll be completed on the 28th of this month, so we'll have everything done. It's gone very well. I don't want to jinx myself, but staff has really stepped up and done a great job at getting these converted over. And those of you that have been switched over, I think, for sure, Chuck, you and...
Yep.
So I'm sure your lights are brighter and
Oh, yes.
I'm hotter, and so...
And I got my final MVEC bill today.
But thanks for your support. It's going really good, and it's been a 2-year process that it's finally coming to an end here, so...
Good. Then what are you going to do?
Oh, there's plenty to do.
Okay. Well, good. Congratulations. You've worked hard and you deserve all the accolades to bring that, all the people in New Prague under the New Prague utilities. Appreciate it.
What numbers did you say came in? 700?
We've got 733 switched over to date, as of today, and then we've got about 127 left, and that is in the Ravenstream area. So that'll be our last switch over on the 28th.
And then the bottles of champagne will flow, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Mayor, while we've got Bruce here, the one that we talked about, it didn't get necessarily mentioned tonight in the public improvement project, but we are taking a look at it as part of the 2019 project on County Road 37 is to take a look at the lighting through that corridor. At the neighborhood meeting, we heard a number of comments about improving some of the darkness through the various facets of that, and so we've talked with Bruce and with Chris in the design phase to see what additional lighting components are needed to help ensure, because of all the walking and the biking and that, the nice summer evenings, is to make sure that that's well lit. So we're going to take a second look at that as part of the project.
Okay. Good. Anything else, Bruce? Okay. Glenn?
I just wanted to make you aware, we got 9 applications for the wastewater 1 job, and we're trying to set up interviews for 4 of the applicants at this point. So we're getting a little closer, I hope, to finalizing that. Other than that, that's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you. Ken?
Nothing.
Michael, anything else?
Just a reminder, next Monday we have budget workshop number 3 on the 26th at 5:45, I believe.
Yep.
We'll have the balance of the general fund to take a look at any of the capital equipment items. I think the outdoor swimming pool discussion is on. As I understand, you've asked for a review of everything associated with the final property tax rate, or what we'll end up doing based on what we do for some of the capital. Hopefully the golf budget will be ready to go after the meeting tomorrow night, and then we've got both water and electric, so we'll finish up all of that next Monday.
So Bruce, you will have water and electric ready?
Yeah, after the commission meeting, I'm going to present it to the council for review.
Awesome, good. Thank you. Anything else, Mike? Barb? Sean? David?
Yeah, and Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong, but, and this is for Kay's and Bruce's benefit, I think. They've had trouble hearing us if we don't speak within 3 inches of the mic. Is that true? That's what we were told.
Not nearly that close.
You don't have to be that close?
No.
I'm okay over here?
Yep, you're good there.
Okay.
As long as I'm underneath the speaker, you're fine here.
Okay.
But isn't the issue on the cable, people have a hard time hearing it, but on the website,
Cable
it's
channels
fine.
are failing at a miserable rate, and school doesn't really use them, and there's really no point to them anymore. You can't just as well take them down. But I think they do work on Comcast's work. I don't have cable. I don't even have cable, so I have no way to check them.
On cable and Comcast, they don't. The volume is too low. You can't hear it. You gotta turn it way up, and then Dave will say something and it'll blast everything off the show.
It's always Dave.
Well, I'm following orders.
But if you go to the website, they seem to be fine.
Exactly, that's just it. That's why I was kind of dumbfounded on which way to go with it.
YouTube channel is the best way to watch it.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, David?
No, that's it.
Bruce, anything? First meeting?
No, I have nothing.
A rule. We got
He sat with his off most of the
Yeah, we got a rule follower here. I like that. There you go. Okay. Kay, do you have anything?
Just one suggestion, if the council takes seriously the bike lanes on 37, I'd like to see more than just a half-mile bike lane path. If the park board wants to address it and there's some continuation, down 37 to the school, or I think it's kind of crazy to just have a little section. At least there should be a plan.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to leave it in the park board's hand because they probably...
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Nope.
The only thing I'd like to say, I'd like to welcome Bruce to the council. I think you'll be a great asset to our organization, and looking forward to working with you in the next few years. I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. What's that?
Gentleman over there.
Do you have any comments you want to make?
Me? No.
No? Okay.
Checking it out.
Okay. And so everyone have a safe and happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you all on Monday. I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
You got a second by Dave Bruchek. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Thank you, everyone. I know it was a long night.